When was the last time you actually enjoyed a match with the Skull Merchant? Whether you're playing as her or against her, odds are it was kind of a slog. Today, we're digging into one of Dead by Daylight's most notorious and least loved killers, the Skull Merchant. Why did she flop so hard? How do we end up here? And is she really as bad as people claim? Let's find out. Welcome back to Forgotten Foes of the Fog, the series where we explore Dead by Daylight's least picked and most divisive killers, and we figure out why they're forgotten and if they deserve a second chance. Last time, we talked all about the twins. Today, we're talking about the very controversial Skull Merchant. Adriana Imai, also known as the Skull Merchant, was introduced in Chapter 27, The Tools of Torment. She came with a modern, cyberpunk-styled concept that was all about a filthy rich businesswoman who had turned into a stalker obsessed with hunting people purely for sport. Her weapon, the razor-sharp dual blades, is a cruel pair of blades designed for ripping through human flesh, just like butter. And her power, eyes in the sky, lets her place drones over areas of interest. If survivors enter their radius, they get scanned, eventually becoming locked on, which makes them exposed and reveals their location for a temporary period. On paper, it sounds like a strategic killer built around map control and tracking. Sounds great, right? In practice, it was a whole different story. So, why is she so unpopular? The biggest issue? Her design simply did not land. Her visual design felt out of place in Dead by Daylight's grim horror world, with many people calling her a Kris Jenner dupe, or possibly just a design that is uninspired or very, very generic. She lacks a creepy or imposing vibe that other killers naturally have in Dead by Daylight, and also her lore is very forgettable. To make matters worse, she received virtually no strong cosmetics post-release, and that limits her appeal both thematically and in terms of cosmetics. Secondly, you have passive, slow gameplay and the 3-gen issue. Passive and slow gameplay is at the heart of the Skull Merchant's base kit. Her gameplay revolves strongly around zoning, which is when players place drones over key areas like generators, loops, pallets, totems, etc., forcing survivors out of the area or stalling them in their chases. But rather than creating active chases, it often results in her circling around objectives, waiting for a survivor to trigger a drone or disable it. While zoning can be powerful when used correctly, Skull Merchant players tend to lean on it so heavily that it slows matches down to a crawl, which can leave both survivors and killers very frustrated in their trials. This feeds directly into her infamous 3-gen strategy. Upon release, Skull Merchant was very powerful, and it was so easy to create a 3-gen situation for survivors. The Skull Merchant excels at defending tight clusters of generators by planting drones over them and forcing survivors to either waste time disabling them or avoiding them entirely. This takes up precious seconds that could be used to progress the game and escape. Combine that with behavior recently reworking a lot of their maps. When they have been reworked, they have become smaller. On smaller maps, it is more natural for generators to be clustered closer together, making it more of a tight area. So that's perfect for a Skull Merchant player. And during the final stages of the match, it can turn into a tedious stalemate if a Skull Merchant is hard defending with her drones. Number 3 was her rework in the patch 7.3. It's worth noting that Skull Merchant actually underwent a major rework in patch 7.3 back in September of 2023. Behavior completely redesigned how her drones operated, removing the overpowered expose mechanic during the early game, changing how survivors interacted with the drones, and reworking her tracking to encourage more active play. The goal was to move her away from her passive 3-gen lockdowns and toward a fairer, chase-focused playstyle. But while the changes definitely helped tone down some of her worst frustrations, they didn't fully solve the core problems. She still relies heavily on zoning and passive slowdown, and many players felt the rework made her less oppressive, but no more fun to play as or against. So we can conclude that the rework of the patch 7.3 was actually a huge nerf for the Skull Merchant, which has led into a huge drop in her pick rate. But is she really as hopeless as people say? Well, no, not entirely. In the right hands and with a good build, the Skull Merchant can lock down a map and create some great games, whether that be snowballing in the endgame or absolutely annihilating from the off. Some players use her drones more aggressively for mid-chase tracking and pressure, but it's a niche skill set, and most players will fall back naturally onto that passive 3-gen playstyle because it's simply safer and more reliable as a strategy in Dead by Daylight. So, is Skull Merchant one of Dead by Daylight's worst killers, or is she simply a victim of gameplay and playstyle? In terms of the fun factor and design, probably one of the worst killers to have been released. In terms of strength, she's frustratingly decent in certain situations, but that can be at the cost of match quality. We are expecting a huge rework of Skull Merchant's base kit in the coming months. However, if you could redesign her power from scratch, how would you change her and what would you change in particular? Let me know down in the comments. And in the next episode, we'll be looking at another controversial killer, the Hag. If you'd enjoyed today's video, I would massively appreciate it if you gave it a big thumbs up because that really helps me out. And make sure that you subscribe to catch future episodes of Forgotten Foes of the Fog. Until then, I will see you on the next video.